The medieval period was shaped by a multitude of forces, but it was often on the battlefield that the course of history was most decisively altered. Certain confrontations stand out not merely for their scale, but for their profound and lasting consequences. These engagements determine the trajectory of empires, the linguistic and cultural development of nations, and the strategic balance of power for centuries to come. We will examine 5 such battles, from the forests of Francia to the walls of Constantinople. In doing so, we will explore the tactical decisions, technological innovations, and political contexts that define these pivotal conflicts. These are not just military histories. They are the moments that forged the medieval world and laid the groundwork for our own. Number 1, the Battle of Tours. Our first battle takes us to the year 732 in the heart of Frankish territory for a clash between the armies of the Umayyad Caliphate and the Franks under their mayor of the palace, Charles. For several decades, the Umayyad Caliphate had expanded from the Middle East across North Africa and into the Iberian Peninsula, which became known as Al-Andalus. By the 720s, Umayyad raiding parties were pushing north of the Pyrenees. In 732, the governor of Al-Andalus, Abdul Rahman al-Ghafiqi, led a substantial army into the Frankish territory of Aquitaine. After defeating the local duke, Eudes, at the Battle of the River Garonne, his forces continued north towards the city of Tours. While some historical interpretations have framed this as a full-scale invasion, many modern historians view it as a major raid, albeit one of significant size. The Frankish kingdoms, ruled by the Merovingian dynasty, were in a state of internal turmoil. Real power lay with the mayor of the palace, a capable commander named Charles. When Duke Eudes appealed for aid, Charles agreed, on the condition that Eudes swear fealty to him. Charles had spent years consolidating his power and creating a more disciplined and veteran force, funded in part by the seizure of church lands. He understood that only a cohesive army could stand against the formidable Umayyad cavalry. He gathered his forces and marched south to intercept Abdul Rahman. Abdul Rahman appears to have been surprised by the presence of a large, organized army blocking his path to Tours. For approximately a week, the two armies observed one another. Charles had selected his position carefully, a high, wooded plain designed to disrupt a cavalry charge and favor his infantry. He arranged his men in a large, dense infantry square, a formation that Arab chroniclers later described as an immovable wall of ice. On the 7th day, the Umayyad attack began. Waves of cavalry crashed against the Frankish shield wall, but Charles's veterans held their ground. While infantry of the period often broke before a cavalry charge, the Franks remained firm. The battle raged for hours, with Umayyad horsemen managing to penetrate the line in some places, only to be repulsed. The turning point occurred when Charles dispatched scouts to raid the Umayyad camp, which held the plunder from the campaign. As word of the raid spread through Abdul Rahman's army, a significant portion of his force disengaged from the main battle to protect their wealth. This movement was misinterpreted by others as a retreat, causing confusion and disorganization throughout the Umayyad ranks. In the ensuing chaos, Abdul Rahman was surrounded and killed while attempting to rally his men. With the death of their commander, the morale of the Umayyad army collapsed. As night fell, they retreated from the field and, under cover of darkness, began their withdrawal south toward the Pyrenees. The Frankish victory at Tours was a significant strategic and psychological blow to the Umayyads. It greatly enhanced the reputation of Charles, who would later be known as Martellus, the Hammer. The battle solidified his authority as the de facto ruler of the Franks, paving the way for his son, Pepin, to become king and for his grandson, Charlemagne, to establish the Carolingian Empire. The broader significance of the battle has long been a subject of historical debate. The 18th century historian Edward Gibbon famously argued that a Frankish defeat could have led to the conquest of Gaul and a fundamental change to the religious and cultural landscape of Europe. However, many contemporary historians suggest this view is overstated, pointing out that Umayyad forces continued to hold territory in southern France for decades, and that their halt in expansion was also heavily influenced by internal conflicts within the Caliphate. At a minimum, the Battle of Tours signaled the rising power of the Franks, halted the momentum of Umayyad expansion into Western Europe, and reinforced the region's distinct political and religious identity. Number 2. The Battle of Hastings. Our second engagement occurs in England during the chaotic year of 1066. The Battle of Hastings represented more than a dynastic change. It initiated a profound transformation of England's language, culture, and social structure, reorienting its destiny toward continental Europe. In January 1066, the death of the heirless English king, Edward the Confessor, created a succession crisis. The English nobility acclaimed Harold Godwinson, the kingdom's most powerful earl, as king. However, two other figures asserted claims to the throne: King Harold Hardrada of Norway and Duke William of Normandy. Harold Godwinson anticipated an invasion from William and spent the summer on the south coast with his army. Unfavorable winds in the Channel delayed the Norman fleet, and by early September, Harold was forced to disband his militia. At this moment, Harold Hardrada's Viking army landed in the north. Harold Godwinson marched his elite housecarls north, gathering forces along the way, and achieved a decisive victory at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Just 3 days later, news arrived that William had finally landed in the south. Exhausted and with a battered army, Harold made the fateful decision to march his forces 250 miles south immediately. He arrived near Hastings with a depleted army, while William commanded a fresh force of knights, archers, and infantry. On the morning of October 14th, Harold positioned his army in a strong defensive position atop Senlac Hill. His forces formed a shield wall, a classic Anglo-Saxon tactic creating a near impenetrable barrier. The battle commenced around 9 a.m., with a volley from William's archers, which proved ineffective against the elevated and shielded English position. Subsequent infantry and cavalry assaults up the slope also failed to break the disciplined shield wall. For hours, the battle was a stalemate. At one point, a rumor of William's death caused the Norman line to waver, forcing the Duke to ride through his troops with his helmet raised to prove he was alive. The turning point came when the Normans employed a tactic of feigned retreats. Groups of Norman cavalry would charge, then pretend to flee, luring undisciplined English militiamen to break from the shield wall in pursuit. Once on level ground, the Norman knights would turn and cut them down. This tactic was repeated, gradually thinning the Anglo-Saxon line. As dusk approached, William ordered a final combined assault. He instructed his archers to fire in a high arc to plunge down on the troops behind the shield wall, while his cavalry and infantry made a final push. During this engagement, Harold Godwinson was killed. With their king dead, the morale of the English army collapsed, the shield wall broke, and the remaining soldiers fled. Hastings was the decisive battle of the Norman conquest. William was crowned King of England on Christmas Day 1066. The consequences were profound. The Anglo-Saxon ruling class was almost entirely replaced by a new Norman aristocracy that spoke French, which became the language of government for the next 3 centuries, fundamentally altering the English language. William introduced a continental feudal system, redistributing land to his lords in exchange for military service, and constructing stone castles to cement his authority. England's political and cultural orientation shifted from Scandinavia towards France, initiating a complex relationship that would define much of the later Middle Ages, eventually leading to the 100 Years' War. The Battle of Hastings did not just conquer England, it remade it. Number 3. The Battle of Manzikert. 5 years after Hastings, a battle of equal consequence was fought in the east. On August 26, 1071, near the town of Manzikert, the army of the Byzantine Empire was defeated by the Seljuk Turks. This event is widely considered the point from which the Eastern Roman Empire never fully recovered, as it triggered a series of events that led to the loss of Anatolia and the beginning of the Crusades. By the mid-11th century, the Byzantine Empire faced a new threat from the Seljuk Turks, who had established a powerful empire and begun raiding the Anatolian heartland, the primary source of the empire's manpower and grain. In 1068, Emperor Romanos Diogenes came to power, determined to drive the Seljuks out. In 1071, he assembled a large, diverse army of Byzantine professionals and foreign mercenaries, including Franks, Normans, and Turkic peoples like the Pechenegs and Cumans. The Seljuk Sultan Alp Arslan was campaigning in Syria and was surprised by the size of the Byzantine force. He offered a peace treaty, but Romanos, confident in his numerical superiority, rejected it. However, the emperor made 2 critical errors. he split his army, sending a large detachment away from the main force, and he entrusted command of the rearguard to Andronikos Doukas, the son of a major political rival. Alp Arslan's army consisted almost entirely of mobile horse archers who employed classic steppe tactics. They would ride in, fire arrows, and retreat before the heavier Byzantine cavalry could engage. These hit-and-run attacks continued throughout the day. Despite the harassment, the Byzantine center under Romanos held firm and managed to capture the Seljuk camp. As evening approached, Romanos ordered a withdrawal to his own camp for the night. This maneuver proved disastrous. The order was misunderstood by parts of his army. At this critical moment, Andronikos Doukas, the commander of the rearguard, deliberately spread a rumor that the emperor had fallen and marched his reserve forces off the battlefield. Seeing the Byzantines in disarray, with their retreat uncovered, Alp Arslan ordered an all-out assault. The Seljuks enveloped the now exposed Byzantine army. Panic ensued, and the Turkic mercenaries in the Byzantine force defected. The emperor and his elite Varangian guard were surrounded. By the end of the night, the Byzantine army was annihilated, and Emperor Romanos was captured, the first time a Byzantine emperor had been taken prisoner by a Muslim force. While the military losses were severe, the true catastrophe was the political fallout. The betrayal by Doukas triggered a decade of civil war as factions vied for the throne. To gain an advantage, rival claimants hired Seljuk mercenaries, inviting them ever deeper into Anatolia. With no organized imperial resistance, what began as raids turned into a full-scale migration and conquest. Within a decade, the Seljuks controlled most of the Anatolian heartland, depriving the empire of its most important recruiting and agricultural region. This defeat led to another world-changing consequence. The new emperor, Alexios Komnenos, sent an appeal to Pope Urban II for mercenary knights to help fight the Turks. The Pope, however, saw an opportunity to unite Western Christendom and, in 1095, called for the First Crusade. This appeal, a direct result of the disaster at Manzikert, unleashed centuries of conflict. Manzikert marked the beginning of the end for the Byzantine Empire. Though it would survive for nearly 400 more years, its heartland was lost, its stability was shattered, and its actions had inadvertently initiated the Crusades. Number 4. The Battle of Crecy. We now return to Western Europe for a battle that defined the late Middle Ages and the Hundred Years' War. At Crecy on August 26, 1346, an outnumbered English army under Edward III defeated a massive French force, challenging the dominance of the mounted knight and signaling a revolution in military tactics. The Hundred Years' War was a dynastic struggle for the French throne. In the summer of 1346, Edward III of England led a large-scale raid, a chevauchée, through Normandy. After months of raiding, his army was cornered near the coast by a much larger French army, led by King Philip VI, composed primarily of heavily armored knights and a contingent of Genoese crossbowmen. Unable to outrun the French, Edward chose his ground with tactical skill. Near Crecy, he positioned his army on a gentle slope with protected flanks. He had his men-at-arms dismount to fight on foot, but his key advantage was the thousands of English and Welsh longbowmen he placed on the flanks. The longbow possessed a range and rate of fire far superior to the crossbow. A skilled archer could fire up to 15 arrows per minute. The French army arrived late in the afternoon, disorganized from a long march. Against his better judgment, Philip was pressured by his eager nobility to order an immediate attack. The Genoese crossbowmen were sent forward first, but a sudden rainstorm had soaked their bowstrings, reducing their effectiveness. In contrast, the English archers had kept their strings dry. As the Genoese advanced, they were met with a massive volley of English arrows that devastated their ranks, causing them to break and flee. Enraged, the French knights charged forward, riding down their own fleeing mercenaries. This began a series of 15 or 16 separate cavalry charges up the muddy, corpse-strewn slope. Each time, the result was the same. The English longbowmen unleashed devastating volleys, their arrows finding gaps in the knights' armor, and more importantly, felling their horses. The uphill charge, crowded conditions, and disciplined English infantry formations prevented the French from ever gaining the momentum needed to break the line. The charges continued into the night, resulting in a slaughter. The scale of the English victory was immense. Thousands of French soldiers and over 1,000 nobles lay dead, while English losses were remarkably light. Crecy was a tactical turning point. It demonstrated that a well-positioned, disciplined force of infantry and archers could defeat a much larger army of elite heavy cavalry. The era of the knight as the undisputed master of the battlefield was ending. The victory established the supremacy of the longbow and allowed Edward to capture the vital port of Calais, which England would hold for over 200 years. The battle also had a profound impact on national identity, becoming a source of pride in England and forcing a painful re-evaluation of military doctrine in France, which eventually led to the development of a more professional royal army. Number 5. The Fall of Constantinople. Our final battle is a siege that marked the end of an era. The Fall of Constantinople on May 29, 1453, was not just the conquest of a city, but the final end of the Roman Empire. The event concluded the Middle Ages and catalyzed developments that would lead to the Renaissance and the Age of Discovery. By 1453, the Byzantine Empire consisted of little more than the city of Constantinople itself. After the Fourth Crusade and the disaster at Manzikert, it had never recovered its former power. The city was surrounded by the expanding Ottoman Empire. In 1451, the ambitious 21-year-old Sultan Mehmed II ascended to the throne, singularly obsessed with capturing Constantinople. Mehmed's preparations were meticulous. He built a fortress to cut off the city from the Black Sea and assembled an army of 80,000 to 120,000 men. His most crucial asset was gunpowder artillery. He hired a Hungarian engineer named Orban to construct enormous bronze cannons, including the Great Turkish Bombard, capable of firing 200-pound stone balls. Inside the city, the last Byzantine emperor, Constantine Palaiologos, had only about 7,000 soldiers to defend 14 miles of the ancient Theodosian walls, which were built for pre-gunpowder warfare. Pleas for aid from the west yielded only a few hundred volunteers. The siege began on April 6, 1453. For 53 days, Mehmed's cannons subjected the walls to a relentless bombardment. The defenders worked nightly to repair the breaches, but the damage was overwhelming. Despite being vastly outnumbered, the defenders repelled multiple assaults. Mehmed even bypassed the chain protecting the Golden Horn Harbor by dragging his ships over a greased wooden road overland. By late May, the defenders were exhausted and the walls were crumbling. On May 29th, Mehmed ordered a final three-wave assault. The defenders held for hours, with Emperor Constantine fighting on the walls himself. The defense finally collapsed when Ottoman troops discovered a small, unlocked gate, the Kirka Porta. They poured into the city, raised their standard on a tower, and attacked the defenders from the rear. Constantine reportedly cast off his imperial regalia and charged into the invading forces, never to be seen again. The fall of Constantinople was the definitive end of the Roman Empire, an institution which had lasted for nearly 1,500 years. Mehmed, now the conqueror, made the city the capital of his Ottoman Empire and converted the great cathedral of Hagia Sophia into a mosque. The consequences were immediate. The last buffer between the Ottomans and Christian Europe was gone, facilitating further Ottoman expansion into the Balkans. The psychological blow to Christendom was immense. However, the city's fall had unintended consequences for the West. Fleeing Greek scholars brought with them ancient knowledge and manuscripts that helped to fuel the Italian Renaissance. Furthermore, with the Ottomans in control of the overland trade routes to Asia, European nations were forced to seek new maritime routes. This necessity spurred the great voyages of discovery, directly leading to the journeys of Columbus and Vasco da Gama. The use of cannon to break the walls signaled the end of the age of castles and the dawn of a new era of warfare, definitively closing the chapter on the medieval world. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like and let me know what you think in the comments.